Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where the sun burns a little harsher, the ground feels a little rougher beneath your feet, and the idea of personal space disappears the moment you're handed a shield. You're not just visiting ancient Greece, you're being quietly, firmly pushed into the life of a soldier. And just to set expectations early, you probably won't survive this, not because you're weak, but because almost no one truly walks away unchanged. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, go ahead and comment your location and local time. It's always fascinating to see where in the world you're listening from as we drift back into history together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't exactly volunteer for this life, at least not in the way modern stories might suggest. There's no dramatic speech, no swelling music, no heroic slow-motion moment where you decide your destiny. Instead, it's quieter, more practical. You're expected to serve because you are a citizen, or at least because someone in power says you should. In many Greek city-states, especially places like Sparta or Athens, military service isn't optional, it's simply part of existing. And so, here you are. You're standing in a dusty open space surrounded by men who look just as uncertain as you feel. Some are younger, barely past boyhood. Others have lines on their faces that suggest they've seen more seasons than they'd like. No one looks particularly excited. The first thing you notice is the heat. It presses down on you, not aggressively but persistently. It seeps into your skin, your clothes, your thoughts. Ancient Greece isn't always the breezy, postcard-perfect coastline people imagine. Much of the land is rocky, dry and unforgiving, and you're about to learn that the environment is just as much an enemy as any opposing army. A voice cuts through the murmuring, short commands, no wasted words. You're told where to stand, how to hold yourself, how to listen. There's an immediate shift. You're no longer just you. You're part of something larger, something stricter. Individual comfort begins to fade almost instantly. Historically, Greek soldiers, especially hoplites, were citizen soldiers. That means you're expected to provide your own equipment in many cases. Historians often point out that this created a strange kind of equality and inequality at the same time. Equality because you stand shoulder to shoulder in battle. Inequality because wealthier soldiers can afford better armour. And right now, you're painfully aware of which category you fall into. Your equipment isn't elegant. It's functional, maybe a bit worn. You run your hand along the edge of your shield, noticing imperfections. This shield, your aspis, is going to be your closest companion. Not your sword, not your spear, the shield. There's even an unspoken rule tied to it. Losing your shield is worse than losing your weapon. Weapons can break. Shields protect the entire line. You don't fully understand that yet, but you will. Training begins almost immediately, and it's not what you expected. There's no gentle introduction, no easing in. You're told to move, and you move. You're told to stop, and you stop. The rhythm is relentless, like a drumbeat you can't escape. You try to keep up. At first it feels manageable, a few steps, a few formations. But then it stretches longer. The commands come faster. Your muscles begin to protest, quietly at first, then more insistently. This is where the reality settles in. You're not training for glory, you're training for endurance. Ancient sources suggest that discipline was everything, especially in places like Sparta, where boys were trained from a young age in the Agog system, a state-controlled upbringing designed to produce soldiers. Historians still argue whether Spartan training was as brutally harsh as later writers claimed, or if some of those stories were exaggerated to enhance their mystique. Either way, the reputation alone is enough to make your current situation feel slightly more survivable, but not by much. You glance around, no one is talking. There's a shared understanding forming, unspoken but heavy. Complaining won't help. Falling behind won't be tolerated. You either adapt, or you become a problem. And problems don't last long here. At some point, you're handed a spear. It's longer than you expected. Heavier too. You adjust your grip, trying to find a balance between control and comfort. There isn't one. Not yet. Your hands aren't used to this. Your shoulders definitely aren't. A quick correction from behind, a nudge, a repositioning of your stance. You didn't even see who did it. That's another thing you notice. Authority here isn't always loud or obvious. It's efficient, direct, almost invisible until it needs to be. You're placed into a line, shoulder to shoulder, closer than you'd normally stand to anyone. You can feel the presence of the person next to you, the heat of their body, the slight shift of their weight. It's uncomfortable at first, almost suffocating, but then you realize this is the point. The phalanx, the iconic Greek formation, depends entirely on this closeness. Your shield overlaps with the next person's. Your safety depends on them. Their safety depends on you. It's less like a group of individuals and more like a single moving wall. A wall that can break, and that thought lingers longer than you'd like. There's a strange detail you overhear during a brief pause, something almost absurd. Some soldiers, it said, would decorate their shields with symbols, animals, patterns, even jokes, not for vanity but for identity. Imagine going into battle with a tiny piece of personality painted onto the very thing that might save your life. It's oddly human, even here, even now. The training continues, and time starts to blur. The sun shifts slightly in the sky, but it doesn't feel like relief, just a different angle of the same relentless heat. Your body begins to ache in ways you didn't expect. Not sharp pain, but a deep, spreading fatigue. The kind that settles into your bones and quietly insists on staying there. And yet, you keep going. Because everyone else does. Because stopping isn't really an option. Because somewhere, deep down, you're starting to understand that survival here isn't about strength alone. It's about rhythm, endurance, trust, and maybe, just maybe, a bit of luck. You adjust your grip on the spear again. It feels slightly more natural now. Not comfortable, but familiar. And in this world, that's already a small victory. You wake up before the light fully arrives. Not because you want to, but because the world around you doesn't wait for comfort. There's a chill in the air at first, a brief, almost deceptive softness before the sun begins its slow climb. For a moment, as you sit up and rub the stiffness from your arms, you might even think this won't be so bad. That feeling doesn't last long. Your body reminds you. Every movement carries a dull ache, the kind that settles deep into your muscles after yesterday's drills. Your shoulders protest first, then your legs, then everything else joins in as if they've all agreed to complain at once. You stretch, cautiously, testing the limits of what still works. It all works, just not comfortably. Around you, others are doing the same. Quiet groans, small shifts, the sound of people waking not from rest but from pause. Sleep here isn't exactly restorative. It's more like a temporary escape from effort. And then, before you can fully gather yourself, the commands begin again. There's no easing into it, no slow start. You're expected to move like you've already been awake for hours, to stand straight, to be ready. So you do. Training today feels heavier, not because the tasks are necessarily harder, but because your body hasn't recovered, and that, you begin to realize, is part of the design. You're not being trained at your best. You're being trained when you're tired, sore, and just a little bit frustrated. Because that's exactly how you'll feel when it matters most. You're handed your spear again. It feels different today. Not lighter, exactly, but less foreign. Your grip finds its place more quickly. Your stance adjusts with less hesitation. It's subtle, but it's there. The beginning of familiarity. Still, that doesn't make what comes next any easier. You're put into formation again, but this time the expectations are sharper. Yesterday you were just trying to keep up. Today, you're expected to move correctly. Forward. The line shifts, not smoothly, not perfectly. There's hesitation, uneven steps, slight collisions as shields bump awkwardly against one another. You feel it immediately, the instability, the lack of unity. And then comes the correction. Not shouted, not dramatic, just repeated. Again, and again, and again, until your legs start to burn and your patience begins to thin. This is where discipline takes shape. Not through inspiration, but through repetition. Endless, sometimes mind-numbing repetition. Historically, this kind of drilling was essential to the Greek phalanx. Unlike looser formations, the phalanx depended on near-perfect coordination. One weak point, one mistimed step, could ripple outward and destabilize the entire line. Historians often note that battles weren't always decided by individual bravery, but by which side could maintain formation longer under pressure, which means this isn't just practice, It's survival training in its most literal form. You begin to notice small details. The way the person to your right tends to step half a moment too early. The way someone behind you breathes heavily, already struggling to keep pace. The slight tilt of shields, the uneven spacing, the subtle signs that this wall is still fragile. And you're part of that fragility. That realization sits with you, heavier than the spear. At some point, the drills change. You're told to hold your shield higher, to angle it just enough to cover not only yourself but part of the person beside you. It feels unnatural at first. Why protect someone else when your own body is already exposed? But that's the lesson. You're not fighting alone. You're never fighting alone. In fact, your survival may depend more on the person next to you than on anything you do yourself. It's a strange, almost uncomfortable kind of trust. Not the kind you choose, but the kind that's forced upon you. And yet, slowly, it begins to make sense. There's a moment, brief, almost easy to miss, where the line moves together just a little more smoothly than before. The steps align, the shields overlap correctly, the motion feels connected. It doesn't last, but it's enough to show you what's possible. Then the fatigue hits again, harder this time. Your arms feel heavier with each lift of the shield. Your grip tightens on the spear not out of control but out of necessity, like if you loosen even slightly it might slip away entirely. The sun has climbed higher now. The brief coolness of morning is gone, replaced by a steady pressing heat that wraps around you like a second layer of weight. Sweat begins to form, slow at first, then faster, until it trickles down your back and into places you'd rather not think about. You keep going, because stopping still isn't an option. There's a strange, almost ironic detail you hear during a short break. Some ancient Greek soldiers believed that music, specifically the sound of flutes, could help maintain rhythm during marches and even in battle. The Spartans in particular were known for advancing to the sound of flutes, keeping their formation steady and controlled. It's a surprisingly calm image, a line of soldiers moving forward, not in chaotic noise, but in measured, almost deliberate rhythm. Historians still argue whether this practice was purely practical, keeping time, or if it also had a psychological effect, calming soldiers and intimidating enemies at the same time. You imagine it for a moment. The steady note of a flute cutting through the tension, the synchronized steps, the illusion of control, and then the moment passes, replaced by the reality you're standing in. No music, just the sound of breathing, footsteps, and the occasional correction from someone who expects more from you than you're sure you can give. By midday, your body feels different. Not stronger, not yet, but more aware. You know where the strain is. You know which movements cost more energy. You begin to adjust without being told. Small shifts in posture, slight changes in grip, tiny efficiencies that make the effort just a little more manageable. This is adaptation. It doesn't feel impressive, it doesn't feel heroic, but it's happening. And in this life, that's everything. You glance again at the line around you. It's still imperfect, still uneven, but it's better than yesterday, and so are you. Not by much, not enough to feel confident, but enough to keep going. And for now, that's all that matters. By the time the armour is placed in front of you, you already know this isn't going to be pleasant. It doesn't look comfortable, it doesn't even pretend to be. The bronze catches the light in a dull, uneven way, not polished to shine, but worn, practical, used. You reach out, almost cautiously, and touch it. It's cool at first, surprisingly so. Holding on to the last traces of the morning air, that changes quickly. You're told to put it on. There's no graceful way to do it. No smooth, cinematic moment. It's awkward, clumsy, and far heavier than you expected. The cuirass, your chest armour, settles onto your body with a weight that feels immediate and personal, like it's pressing you down into the ground. For a second, you just stand there, adjusting, trying to breathe normally. It's not unbearable, but it's close enough to make you wonder how long you're supposed to endure this. And then comes the helmet. You lift it, feeling the weight in your hands before it even reaches your head. When you lower it into place, the world changes instantly. Your vision narrows, framed by the rigid edges of bronze. Your hearing dulls slightly, as if everything is now filtered through a layer of distance. You're still here, but not quite the same. This is one of those moments historians often highlight. not just for the physical transformation, but the psychological one. Putting on armor doesn't just protect you, it separates you. It creates a barrier between you and everything else, including, in some ways, your own sense of self. Historians still argue whether this made soldiers feel safer or more trapped, whether the armor gave confidence, or quietly amplified the fear by reminding you exactly what you were preparing for. Right now, it feels like both. You take a step. The added weight shifts your balance slightly. Your body compensates, adjusting without asking your permission. Another step, then another. Each movement is just a little slower, a little more deliberate, and then they hand you the shield. You thought it was heavy before. You were wrong. The Aspis is larger than it looks when it's leaning casually against something. When it's strapped to your arm, when you actually have to carry it, it becomes something else entirely. It pulls at your shoulder, demands strength you're not sure you have yet. There's a reason it's so important, and you're starting to feel it. A typical hoplites equipment could weigh anywhere between 20 to 30 kilograms altogether, sometimes even more depending on the quality and additions. That's not just a number. That's something you now carry with every step, every shift, every breath. And you don't get to take it off when it becomes inconvenient. You stand there, fully equipped now, and for a moment everything feels still. Not peaceful, just paused. Then the command comes. Move, you obey. The difference is immediate. What was already tiring becomes exhausting. What was manageable becomes difficult. Your legs lift against resistance that wasn't there before. Your shoulders strain under the combined weight of armor and shield. Even your breathing feels slightly restricted, as if the armor itself has an opinion about how much air you deserve. You fall into formation again, closer than ever now. The shields overlap, not just lightly, but firmly. You feel the edge of someone else's shield press against yours. It's no longer just about standing side by side, it's about locking together, becoming something unified, or at least trying to. The drills begin. Forward, step, hold, adjust. Each command demands precision, but the armor doesn't make precision easy. It resists quick movement, punishes hesitation, exaggerates every small mistake. You feel it immediately when your timing is off. The slight jolt, the shift in balance, the way your body struggles to recover, and yet everyone around you is dealing with the same thing. That's the strange part. You're all equally burdened, which means the expectation doesn't change. You push forward. There's a moment where your shield dips slightly, just a fraction, barely noticeable to you, but not to them. A correction comes instantly, a firm tap, a gesture, a silent reminder that even the smallest lapse matters, because in a real battle, that small lapse could be everything. There's an old saying from Sparta, something mothers supposedly told their sons when they left for war. Come back with your shield, or on it. It sounds dramatic, almost too perfect. Historians still argue whether this phrase was actually used as commonly as later sources suggest, or if it became more symbolic over time. But the meaning is clear enough. The shield isn't just equipment, it's responsibility. You carry it not just for yourself, but for the line, for the people beside you. That idea settles into your thoughts as the drills continue. The weight doesn't get lighter, but your awareness of it changes. You begin to anticipate the strain, to shift your posture just slightly before it becomes too much. Your grip adjusts again, more naturally this time. Your steps find a rhythm, not smooth, not effortless, but consistent. It's a small improvement, but it matters. The heat builds steadily. Bronze doesn't breathe. It holds warmth, traps it, reflects it back into you. What started as a manageable temperature becomes something more intense, more persistent. Sweat gathers quickly now, with nowhere to go. It stays, clinging. You can feel it beneath the armor, between your skin and the rigid surface, creating a discomfort that doesn't fade. It just becomes part of the experience. Another step, another adjustment, another correction. Time stretches, not in a dramatic way, but in a slow, almost quiet expansion. Each moment feels longer, heavier, filled with effort that doesn't quite end. And yet, you keep moving. There's a strange detail someone mentions during a brief pause, something almost absurd in the middle of all this seriousness. Some hoplites, it's said, would hang small charms or tokens from their armor, not for protection in a physical sense, but for luck. Personal items, tiny reminders of home or of something beyond the battlefield. It's oddly comforting to think that even here, surrounded by weight and discipline and expectation, there's still room for something personal, something human. You adjust your shield again. It feels slightly more natural now. Not easy, not comfortable, but familiar. And that familiarity is growing. Slowly. Quietly. You take another step forward, feeling the weight settle into you rather than against you. And for the first time you realise you're not just carrying the armour anymore, you're learning how to live inside it. You don't notice the pressure at first, not fully. It begins as something small, just the closeness of the person beside you, the way your shield edge touches theirs, the way your elbow has less space than it used to. But as you settle into position again, as the line tightens and the commands become sharper, that small discomfort grows into something much harder to ignore. You're no longer standing, you're part of a wall. The phalanx doesn't ask for your individuality. It doesn't care about your preferences, your habits, or the way you naturally move. It demands alignment, precision, cooperation so complete that it almost feels unnatural. You shift slightly. Immediately you feel it, the ripple. A small adjustment from you causes a slight imbalance in the shield overlap. The person next to you compensates. The person next to them follows. It's subtle, but it's there. A chain reaction of tiny corrections, and that's when it hits you. Every movement matters. Not just yours, everyone's. The command comes again. Forward. This time, the line moves more tightly than before. Shields press together with a dull, rhythmic contact. You can hear it. A soft, repeating knock of wood and bronze like a heartbeat that belongs to all of you at once. Your breathing adjusts to match the pace. In, step, out, step. There's something almost hypnotic about it, but it's fragile. You feel the person behind you, closer than you'd like. Their shield occasionally nudges your back, not aggressively, but insistently. It's a reminder that you're not just moving forward, you're being pushed forward. This is how the phalanx works. Not just a line, but a force, a slow, steady pressure designed to overwhelm whatever stands in front of it. Historians often describe this as othismos, a term sometimes interpreted as the push. But here's where things get interesting. Historians still argue whether this pushing was literal, like a physical shoving match between lines, or more of a metaphor for pressure and momentum in battle. Standing here now, feeling the weight behind you and the resistance ahead, it's easy to believe it might be both. You take another step. Your shield is no longer just something you hold, it's something you lean into, something you trust. The edge presses firmly against your arm, the strap digging slightly into your skin as you adjust your grip. You glance sideways, just briefly. Not enough to break formation, but enough to notice the person beside you. Their face is partially hidden by their helmet, but you can see the tension in their jaw, the focus in their eyes. They're relying on you, just as much as you're relying on them. It's not a comforting thought. It's a heavy one. The drills become more intense, faster commands, sharper turns, sudden stops that force your body to react instantly. Despite the weight, despite the fatigue that's already beginning to creep back in, your legs burn, your shoulders ache. But the real strain isn't just physical, it's mental. Maintaining this level of awareness, of yourself, of the people around you, of the formation as a whole, it demands constant attention. There's no drifting off, no moment where you can simply go through the motions, because the moment you do, it shows, and it affects everyone. There's a brief pause, and for a second the line loosens. Not much, just enough for you to feel the difference. The space, the air, is almost a relief. And then, close ranks. The space disappears instantly. Shields lock again, shoulders press together. The brief comfort of distance is gone, replaced by that familiar, suffocating closeness. You're starting to understand something important. Comfort isn't part of this system. It's not meant to be. There's a strange detail someone mutters nearby, barely loud enough to hear. In some city-states, soldiers were arranged in formations based on relationships. Friends, family members, even lovers standing side by side. The idea was simple. You're less likely to break formation if the person next to you is someone you care about. The most famous example comes from Thebes, the sacred band, an elite unit said to be composed of pairs of male lovers. Their bond, it was believed, made them exceptionally strong in battle. Historians still debate how widespread this practice was, and how much of it is shaped by later storytelling. But the concept lingers. Would it make this easier? Standing next to someone you trust completely? Or harder? Knowing exactly what's at stake if you fail? The drills resume before you can think too deeply about it. This time, there's a new element. Contact. Not full combat, nothing chaotic, but controlled, deliberate pressure. The line in front of you pushes back just enough to force you to react. Your shield meets theirs with a solid impact, sending a vibration through your arm. It's not painful, but it's not comfortable either. You brace, instinctively. Your legs adjust, your stance lowers slightly, your body trying to find stability under the combined weight of armor, shield, and opposing force. Push. The command is simple. You lean forward, not wildly, not aggressively, just enough. You feel the resistance immediately. The shields press harder, the line tightens, and for a moment everything feels locked in place. Two forces meeting, neither giving way, and then release. The pressure eases, but the memory of it stays. That brief moment of contact, of resistance, of shared strain, it tells you more than any instruction could. This is what it will feel like. Not a dramatic clash of heroes, but a grinding, exhausting test of endurance and cohesion. You adjust your grip again. Your hands are starting to understand what to do without being told. That's new. There's another push. This time you're more prepared. Your stance holds. Your shield stays firm. It's not perfect, but it's better. The line holds just a little longer before breaking, and when it does, the correction is immediate. Again, 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 until holding becomes instinct, or at least something close to it. The sun is higher now. The heat presses down harder, amplifying everything, the weight, the fatigue, the discomfort. Sweat drips down your face, caught briefly by the edge of your helmet before falling away. You barely notice anymore. Your focus has narrowed, not like your vision through the helmet, but mentally. You're not thinking about anything beyond the next step, the next command, the next adjustment. Everything else fades, and in that fading something shifts. The fear is still there, the uncertainty too, but they're quieter now, drowned out by repetition, by effort, by the simple, constant need to keep moving, to keep holding, to keep being part of something larger than yourself. You take another step forward, your shield aligns, your body braces, and for a moment, just a moment, the line feels solid, not perfect, not unbreakable, but real, and you're holding it. Hunger doesn't arrive all at once. It builds, slowly, quietly, like everything else here. At first, it's just a faint reminder in the background, a small emptiness you can ignore while you focus on drills, on movement, on not falling behind. But as the hours stretch and the effort continues, that emptiness grows into something more persistent, something harder to ignore. By the time you're finally given a break, your body isn't just tired, it's asking for something. Fuel, relief, anything that feels like it might restore even a fraction of what you've spent. You're handed food. If you were expecting something warm, something comforting, something that resembles a proper meal, this is where expectations quietly fall apart. It's simple, very simple. Bread, coarse, dense, a little dry. Olives, slightly bitter. Maybe a bit of cheese, if you're fortunate. Sometimes dried figs or onions. And water. Always water. You take a bite. It's not unpleasant, but it's not satisfying either. It's functional. And that's the point. Ancient Greek soldiers didn't eat for enjoyment during training or campaigns. They ate for survival. Rations were designed to last, to be carried easily, to provide enough energy without requiring preparation. Historians note that barley bread in particular was a staple, cheaper and more durable than wheat, though often less desirable in taste. You chew slowly, partly because it's dense, partly because you want it to last. Around you, others are doing the same. There's very little conversation, not because it's forbidden, but because there's an unspoken understanding. Eating is a moment to recover, not to socialize. You notice how quickly the food disappears. Not rushed, just efficient. No one lingers over it. No one seems surprised by it. This is normal for them, and now it's becoming normal for you. You take a sip of water, it's warm, not refreshing in the way you might hope, but still welcome. It settles into your body, easing something inside you, even if only slightly. There's a strange detail someone mentions between bites, something that almost sounds like a joke. Spartan soldiers, it's said, were known for a dish called black broth, a mixture rumoured to include pig's blood, vinegar and salt. It doesn't sound appealing at all. In fact, other Greeks supposedly mocked it. There's even a story that a visitor from another city tasted it and immediately understood why Spartans were so fearless, because apparently death might be preferable. Historians still argue whether the recipe was truly as unpleasant as described, or if the stories were exaggerated for humour or rivalry. But the idea lingers. Food here isn't about pleasure, it's about necessity. You finish your portion. It doesn't feel like enough. It never really will. But it's what you get, and so you accept it. There's only a short rest before training resumes. Your body protests. Quietly at first, then more insistently as you stand again, lifting your shield, adjusting the weight of your armour. The brief pause helped, but not enough to fully recover. Just enough to keep going. And that seems to be the pattern. Not comfort, not relief, just enough. You return to formation. The hunger doesn't disappear, it settles, becomes part of the background noise, like the heat, like the ache in your muscles. It's there, but it doesn't stop you. It can't. The drills continue. Your movements are slower at first, your body still adjusting after the brief rest. But gradually you find the rhythm again. Step, hold, adjust. The same pattern, repeated until it feels almost automatic. Almost. There's a moment where you misstep. Just slightly. Your foot lands a fraction out of sync with the rest of the line. It's small, barely noticeable, but you feel it. And so does the person beside you. The correction comes quickly. A shift. A nudge. The line stabilizes. No words are exchanged. They don't need to be. That's another thing you're learning. Communication here isn't always verbal. It's physical, immediate, unavoidable. The afternoon stretches on. The sun is relentless now, sitting high above, pressing down with a steady, unwavering intensity. Your armour traps the heat, your body working harder just to maintain the same level of effort. You sweat more. You drink when you can. But it never quite feels like enough. There's a kind of balance you're trying to maintain, between exhaustion and function, between hunger and energy. Too much of one, and the other suffers. And there's no room for suffering here. Not really. You overhear another small detail during a pause, something that feels almost out of place. Some soldiers, especially on longer campaigns, would forage for extra food when possible. Wild herbs, small animals, anything that could supplement their rations. It sounds practical, but also risky. Straying too far, even briefly, could mean missing a command, falling out of formation, becoming a problem. And as you've already learned, problems don't last long, so you stay where you are, you take what you're given, and you adapt. That word keeps coming back. Adapt. Not improve, not excel, just adapt. You adjust your grip on the spear again. It's become a habit now, a small, almost unconscious movement that helps you settle into the rhythm of everything else. The line moves forward, you follow. Your body feels heavier than it did this morning. Not just from the armour, but from the accumulated effort, the slow drain of energy that food hasn't fully replaced. And yet, you keep going. Because everyone else does. Because stopping still isn't an option. Because somewhere along the way you've started to understand that this life isn't about feeling ready. It's about continuing anyway. The hunger remains, the fatigue builds, the heat doesn't ease, but you move, step by step, shield by shield, part of the line, part of something that doesn't stop just because you're uncomfortable. And maybe that's the hardest lesson so far. Not the weight, not the drills, not even the fear, but the quiet realization that your needs, your hunger, your comfort, your rest are no longer the priority. The line is. And as you take another step forward, feeling the familiar pull of the shield, the steady presence of the person beside you, you understand. You're starting to think like a soldier, whether you wanted to or not. The moment you start marching, you realize something important. Standing still was the easy part. At least when you stood in formation, the ground beneath you didn't change. The weight stayed predictable. The effort, while exhausting, had a kind of rhythm you could learn. But now, the ground moves with you, or rather you move across it, and it doesn't care how tired you are. The path ahead isn't smooth. It isn't even particularly kind. It's uneven, scattered with loose stones, patches of dry dirt, and the occasional stubborn rise that forces your legs to work harder than they already want to. You take your first few steps carefully. The armour shifts with each movement, the weight redistributing in ways that feel unfamiliar. Your sandals, simple, practical, offer little cushioning. Every rock, every dip in the terrain makes itself known. You adjust, because you have to. The line stretches forward and back, a long moving column of bronze and determination. There's less closeness than in formation, but not much freedom either. You're still part of a unit, still expected to maintain pace, still watched, if not directly, then through the silent pressure of expectation. No one wants to be the one who falls behind. You hear it before you fully notice it. The sound. A steady rhythm of footsteps, leather against dust, the faint clink of bronze shifting with movement. It's not perfectly synchronized, but it's consistent enough to create a kind of background pulse. You fall into it. Step, step, step. It's almost meditative. Almost. Because then the terrain changes. A slight incline appears ahead. Not steep enough to stop you, but enough to make every step just a little more demanding. Your legs feel it immediately. The added effort pulls at muscles that are already tired from drills, from standing, from simply existing under the weight of everything you carry. You keep going, because stopping isn't an option. Ancient Greek armies often had to march long distances, sometimes covering dozens of kilometres in a single day depending on urgency. Historians point out that speed and endurance could determine the outcome of entire campaigns, arriving first, arriving prepared, arriving at all. Which means this march. It's not just movement, it's preparation. You shift your grip on the shield again, trying to balance its weight more comfortably. It doesn't quite work. It never quite works. The strain remains, settling into your shoulder like a constant reminder that nothing here is meant to be easy. The sun climbs higher, again. It feels like it never really left. The heat builds steadily, pressing down from above while the ground reflects it back up at you. It surrounds you, wraps around your body, seeps into your armour until even the air you breathe feels warmer. Sweat forms quickly. There's no escaping it. It runs down your back, your arms, your face. It collects beneath the armour, trapped, persistent. You wipe your brow when you can, but it barely makes a difference. You're not cooling down, you're just continuing. There's a moment when the line slows slightly. Not a stop, just a subtle adjustment. You take advantage of it, easing your pace for a second, letting your muscles catch up with your breathing. It helps, a little. Then the pace picks up again. Of course it does. You pass through a patch of rougher ground, loose stones that shift underfoot, forcing you to focus more carefully on where you place each step. One wrong move, one slight misjudgment, and you could lose your balance. And here, losing your balance isn't just embarrassing. It's dangerous. You see it happen to someone a few rows ahead, a misstep, a stumble, nothing dramatic, but enough to break the rhythm. The line adjusts around them, not stopping, not waiting. They recover quickly, forced to because the march doesn't pause for individual mistakes. It continues, always. There's a strange detail you overhear as the march stretches on. Some Greek soldiers, particularly in longer campaigns, would sing or chant softly to maintain rhythm and morale. Not loudly, not in celebration, but quietly, almost like a shared breath between them. It's not happening here, not now, but you can imagine it. A low, steady sound cutting through the heat and fatigue, giving the mind something to hold on to besides the endless repetition of steps. Historians still argue whether these chants were common across all city-states, or more specific to certain regions or situations. But the idea makes sense. Anything to make this easier, anything to break the monotony. You adjust your pace again, trying to match the person in front of you more precisely. It's easier when you stop thinking about the distance, about how far you've come or how far you still have to go. You focus on the next step and then the next. That's all you can do. Time stretches. Not dramatically, not in a way you can measure, but in the slow accumulation of effort. Minutes blend into each other. The landscape changes slightly, then slightly again, but it all feels the same after a while. Dry, rough, endless. Your body settles into a kind of rhythm. Not comfortable, but sustainable. Your breathing evens out, your steps become more consistent, your movements less reactive and more automatic. It's not that the effort decreases, it's that you've found a way to carry it. For now. There's a brief pause eventually. Not long. Just enough for the line to stop, for you to stand still again, for the weight to shift in a different way. You feel it immediately. The sudden absence of forward motion makes the armour feel heavier, the fatigue more noticeable. You take a sip of water. It's still warm, still not refreshing, but still necessary. You don't drink too much. You've already learned that resources are limited, and there's no guarantee when the next opportunity will come. The march resumes. Of course it does. And as you step forward again, feeling the now familiar pull of the shield, the steady presence of the line around you, you realise something subtle but important. You're not thinking about quitting anymore. Not because it's easier, not because you're stronger, but because you've adjusted, adapted. The same word again. It follows you, just like the sound of your footsteps, just like the weight of your armour. You take another step, then another. The terrain doesn't soften, the heat doesn't fade, the distance doesn't shrink, but you keep moving, because that's what this life demands. And slowly, quietly, you're becoming someone who can meet that demand. By the time the march finally slows, it doesn't feel like relief. It feels like uncertainty. Your body has adjusted to movement, to the steady rhythm of step after step, the predictable strain, the forward momentum that kept everything focused on a single direction. But now, as the line begins to break formation, and the command to halt quietly passes through, that rhythm disappears, and suddenly, you're left with everything else. The weight, the fatigue, the hunger that never really went away. You stop. Your legs don't quite know what to do at first. There's a strange stiffness, a hesitation, as if they expect to keep moving and aren't entirely convinced that stopping is allowed. But it is, for now. This is camp, or at least something that passes for one. There's no neat arrangement, no perfectly laid out rows of tents like you might imagine from a story. Instead, it's practical, temporary. A space chosen more for its usefulness than its comfort. Flat enough to rest, close enough to water if you're lucky, defensible if things go wrong. You lower your shield, carefully. Your arm feels lighter immediately, but also strangely exposed, as if it's forgotten what it's like to not carry that constant weight. You roll your shoulder slightly, feeling the stiffness settle in more clearly now that the motion has stopped. It doesn't go away. It just becomes more noticeable. Around you, others are doing the same, setting down equipment, adjusting armour, stretching in small, restrained ways. There's no dramatic collapse, no exaggerated relief, just quiet, controlled movements. Even rest here is disciplined. You're shown where to sit, or rather, where not to be in the way. There's no assigned comfort, no personal space carved out just for you. You find a spot on the ground, dry, uneven, but acceptable, and lower yourself onto it with a careful exhale. For a moment, you just sit, not thinking, not moving, just existing. The air feels different here, still warm but less oppressive without the constant motion. A faint breeze passes through occasionally, barely noticeable, but enough to remind you that the world isn't entirely static. You take a breath, then another. Your body begins to settle, the tension easing just slightly, not disappearing, but loosening its grip. This is rest, not comfort, just pause. Ancient Greek camps were often simple by necessity. Soldiers didn't carry elaborate tents or equipment on most campaigns, especially hoplites who already bore the weight of their armour. Historians note that many would sleep in the open, using cloaks or simple coverings if they had them. Which means what you're feeling right now? This is normal, expected. There's a small distribution of food again. Similar to before, bread, olives. Maybe a bit of something extra if supplies allow. You eat without much thought, your body taking what it needs, even if your mind wishes for something more satisfying. It helps, a little, but not enough to feel full. That doesn't seem to be the goal. As the light begins to soften, just slightly, the harsh edge of the sun easing into something less direct, you notice the sounds of the camp shifting. Less movement. More quiet. Low voices here and there, brief exchanges, but nothing loud. Nothing that breaks the overall stillness. It's not silence. It's something softer. Controlled. There's a strange detail you overhear from nearby. Something almost out of place in this environment. Some Greek soldiers, it's said, would tell stories at night. Not grand epics or heroic tales, but simple things. Memories, small moments, bits of humour. It feels human. A reminder that beneath all the discipline and structure, these are still people trying to hold on to something familiar. Historians still argue how common this was during active campaigns, especially in more tense situations where silence might be necessary. But the idea lingers, and you can understand why. Because as the day fades, your mind starts to wander. You think about things you haven't had time to consider until now, not in detail, not deeply, but enough to feel their presence. The life you had before this, the routines that felt normal, they seem distant now, not gone, just far away. You shift slightly, trying to find a more comfortable position on the ground. It doesn't quite work. There's always a stone, a slope, something that prevents true comfort. You adjust again, still not perfect, but acceptable. That seems to be the theme. Acceptable. Night approaches slowly. The sky changes in subtle ways, the brightness dimming, the colours softening. The heat lingers, but it's less aggressive now, replaced by a gentle cooling that feels almost like a reward. Almost. You're not given much instruction for sleep, just an understanding. Stay close. Be ready. Rest while you can. You lie back. The ground is firm beneath you, unyielding. Your armour isn't fully removed, only adjusted enough to make lying down possible without too much discomfort. It's a compromise between rest and readiness. Your shield is nearby, always nearby. You don't need to be told that. It's instinct now. You close your eyes. For a moment it's difficult to relax. Your body is still alert, still holding on to the tension of the day. Every small sound feels amplified. The shifting of someone nearby, the faint rustle of movement, the distant call of something you can't quite identify. But gradually, slowly, that tension begins to fade. Your breathing deepens. Your muscles loosen, just slightly. Not fully, never fully, but enough. There's a quiet awareness that even here, even now, you're not entirely safe, not completely at rest. But you're as close as this life allows, and that has to be enough. You drift, not into deep sleep right away, but into something softer, lighter. A state where thoughts come and go without fully forming, where the body rests even if the mind stays partially aware. It's not perfect sleep, but it's sleep. And here, that's everything. As the night settles in around you, the sounds of the camp growing quieter, the movement slowing to almost nothing, you realise something subtle but important. You made it through the day, not easily, not comfortably, but completely. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. The first thing you notice isn't the sight of battle, it's the sound. Low at first, distant, almost easy to ignore if you didn't know better. A dull, uneven murmur carried across the air, like wind moving through something heavy, something restless. But it's not wind. You're standing in formation again, your shield strapped to your arm, your spear steady in your grip, and that sound is growing. Voices, movement, metal. Your body reacts before your mind fully catches up. There's a tightening in your chest, a subtle shift in your breathing. Not panic, at least not yet, but awareness. This is different. Training had rhythm, predictability. This doesn't. The line tightens around you. Closer than before. More deliberate. There's no wasted motion now, no hesitation in the commands. Everything feels sharper, more immediate. The space between you and the person beside you disappears completely as shields lock into place. You can feel it, the tension passing through the line like a current. The sound grows louder. What was once a murmur becomes something more distinct. You can pick out individual elements now, the clatter of armour, the uneven rhythm of footsteps, the occasional shout that rises above the rest and then disappears again. You don't need to see them yet. You know they're there. Your grip tightens on the spear, not consciously, it just happens. A natural response to the growing weight of the moment. Historians often describe ancient battles as chaotic, but that word doesn't quite capture this feeling. It's not immediate chaos, it's the approach of it. The slow, steady build-up where everything feels controlled right up until the moment it isn't. And you're standing right on the edge of that moment. The command comes. Advance. Your line moves forward. Step, step, step. The rhythm is there, but it's different now. Heavier, more deliberate. Each step carries intention, not just repetition. You're not just practicing anymore. You're closing distance. The ground beneath you feels the same as before. Dry, uneven. But it doesn't matter as much. Your focus has narrowed, your awareness pulling inward and outward at the same time. You're aware of your footing, your grip, your position, and also of the presence ahead. They come into view gradually, not all at once. Shapes at first, movement, the suggestion of a line that mirrors your own, then details, shields, spears, helmets catching the light. They look like you. That's the strange part. Not monstrous, not dramatically different. Just another line of men standing the same way, holding the same equipment, preparing for the same moment. It makes everything feel more real, and somehow more unsettling. You hear a voice somewhere down the line, not shouting wildly but firm, controlled. Instructions, reminders, keep formation, hold the line, as if you could forget. The distance closes, slowly, too quickly. Your breathing deepens again, not because you're tired, but because your body is preparing for something it can't fully predict. Your heart beats faster, not wildly, but noticeably. You feel it, in your chest, in your hands, even in the way your grip shifts slightly on the spear. There's a brief moment, just a fraction of time, where everything feels suspended. Two lines facing each other, close enough to see, not yet touching. And in that moment, historians often wonder what soldiers felt most strongly. Fear? Duty? Anticipation? Historians still argue whether courage in these situations was a conscious choice, or simply the absence of time to think about anything else. Standing here now, it feels like both. Then, impact. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just sudden. The shields meet first, a solid, jarring contact that travels through your arm and into your body. It's heavier than the controlled drills, less predictable. The line shifts under the force, adjusting instantly, reacting without pause. Push. You lean forward, not because you want to, but because you have to. The pressure from behind is immediate. The person behind you pushes, and you push forward in response, your shield pressing harder against the one in front of you. This is the othismos you heard about, and it's not abstract anymore. It's real. You feel it in your legs, straining to hold position, in your shoulders, bracing against the weight, in your hands, gripping tighter than you thought possible. The line wavers. Not much, but enough to feel. Spears move, not wildly, controlled, deliberate thrusts over and around the shields. You don't think about it too much. You follow the motion you've practiced, your body acting on repetition more than conscious decision. There's noise now, more than before. Shouts. Short. Sharp. Almost instinctive. The sound of wood and bronze colliding. The uneven rhythm of movement that no longer follows a clean pattern. It's not overwhelming, but it's constant. You focus on your position, your shield, the person beside you. Everything else becomes secondary. There's a moment where the line surges forward, just slightly. You feel it immediately, the shift in balance, the brief advantage. Your feet move quickly to keep up, your body adjusting without hesitation. Then it stabilizes again. Nothing is permanent here, not advantage, not position. Everything shifts, everything changes. There's a strange, almost detached thought that passes through your mind in the middle of it all. This isn't like the stories. There are no clear heroes, no dramatic duels playing out in front of you, just pressure, effort, endurance, and the constant need to hold your place. A spear glances against your shield, not a direct strike, but enough to remind you how close everything is, how little space there is between safety and something else entirely. You adjust, you hold, you continue. Time loses its shape here. It doesn't feel long, it doesn't feel short, it just happens. One moment flowing into the next without clear boundaries, and then gradually something shifts. The pressure changes, not suddenly, but noticeably. The line in front of you gives, just slightly at first, a small step back, a moment of imbalance. You feel it. Everyone does. Push. The command comes again. You lean forward, your legs responding, your shield pressing harder. The movement carries through the line, and for a moment, it works. The opposing line breaks just a little more. Not completely, not dramatically, but enough to create space. And in that space, everything feels different. Lighter. Not safe, but less confined. The noise shifts, the rhythm changes, and you realize this is only the beginning. The moment the pressure eases, something else takes its place. Pain. Not sharp at first, not dramatic, just present. You don't notice exactly when it started. Somewhere between the pushing, the bracing, the constant strain of holding your position, your body began to collect small injuries, tiny reminders that nothing here happens without cost. Now that the line has shifted, now that there's a fraction more space, you begin to feel them. Your arm aches, your shoulder burns, there's a dull throb in your leg that you can't quite trace to a single moment, a single misstep. You're still standing, still holding your shield, still part of the line. But you're aware now, more than before, of your body as something fragile, something that can fail. The commands haven't stopped. They've just changed. Less about holding position, more about adjusting to the shifting shape of the fight. You take a step forward, then another, carefully. Because the ground isn't the same as it was moments ago. It's been disturbed, churned by movement, uneven in ways that weren't there before. You have to pay attention again, to your footing, to your balance, to the way your body responds. And at the same time, you can't lose focus on anything else. This is where it becomes complicated. Not just physically, mentally. You're trying to hold multiple things at once. Your position, your awareness, your reactions, and now, your pain. Because it doesn't go away. It settles in, becomes part of the experience. Ancient battlefield injuries were rarely clean or easily managed. Even minor wounds could become serious without proper care. Historians often point out that infection, rather than the injury itself, was one of the greatest dangers soldiers faced. And right now, you don't have time to think about any of that. You feel something shift against your arm, a sharper impact this time. Your shield absorbs it, but the force travels through, jolting your shoulder. You tighten your grip instinctively, adjusting your stance to compensate. You're still holding. That's what matters. You glance, just briefly, at the person beside you. They're still there, still moving, still holding their position. There's a strange comfort in that. Not because it makes things easier, but because it means the line is still intact. And as long as the line holds, you have a chance. There's a moment when someone a short distance away stumbles, not dramatically, not in a way that immediately breaks everything, but enough to create a gap. A small one, but noticeable. The reaction is immediate. The line shifts, closes, fills the space. You feel it as it happens, the subtle pull, the adjustment that brings you slightly closer to the person on your other side. It's not comfortable, but it's necessary. Because gaps are dangerous. Gaps are where things fall apart. You've learned that already. The pressure builds again, not as intense as before, but steady enough to demand your full attention. Your legs brace, your body leans, your shield presses forward with a controlled force. You're not thinking about technique anymore, you're just doing it. There's a strange detail that surfaces in your mind, something you heard during training. Some Greek physicians, like Hippocrates, wrote about treating wounds with methods that seemed surprisingly methodical for the time. Cleaning injuries, applying bandages, even attempting basic surgeries. It sounds reassuring, in theory. But here, in this moment, it feels distant, almost irrelevant. Because treatment comes later, if it comes at all. Historians still argue how effective ancient Greek medicine really was on the battlefield. Some believe it was more advanced than often assumed, while others point out the limitations. Lack of antiseptics, limited understanding of infection. Standing here now, you don't need the debate, you just need to keep standing. A sharp sting runs through your hand as your grip shifts again. You don't look down, you don't have time. You adjust, tighten, continue. That's the pattern. Feel, adjust, continue. There's no pause between them. The sounds around you have changed. Less of the initial clash, more of a steady, uneven rhythm, movement, contact, brief surges of intensity followed by moments of relative stillness. It's not chaos, not completely, but it's no longer controlled either. It's something in between, and you're inside it. You take another step. Your leg protests. You ignore it. You shift your weight slightly, finding a position that feels just stable enough to hold. It's not perfect. Nothing is, but it works. For now. There's a brief opening in front of you. Not large, not dramatic, but enough to notice. You adjust your position instinctively, your shield angling slightly, your body aligning with the movement of the line. You don't think about it. You just do it. That's new. That's adaptation again. It keeps appearing in different forms in different moments. Not as a choice, but as a necessity. There's a quieter moment, just a few seconds where the pressure eases again. You take a breath, deeper this time, feeling the air fill your lungs more fully than it has in a while. It helps, a little. Then it's gone, replaced by the next movement, the next adjustment, the next demand. You realize something subtle. You're not focused on winning, not in a grand, heroic sense. You're focused on holding, on staying in place, on not being the point where everything breaks. And maybe that's what this really is. Not a story of victory or defeat, but a test of endurance, of cohesion, of how long you can keep going when everything in your body is telling you to stop. You take another step. Your shield holds, your grip steadies, the pain remains, but it no longer surprises you. It's just part of the rhythm now. And as you continue, step by step, movement by movement, you understand something that wasn't clear before. This isn't about avoiding injury. It's about continuing despite it. Because here, that's the only way forward. By the time the movement slows again, it doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a shift. Not relief, not victory, just a change in pressure. The line steadies, the immediate intensity easing into something more controlled, more watchful. You're still in position, still holding your shield, still aware of every small movement around you. But the constant push, the relentless demand for force, has softened. For now. Your body doesn't relax. It can't. Not fully. There's too much tension still coiled beneath the surface, too much uncertainty about what comes next. You keep your stance, your grip, your focus, because letting go, even slightly, feels like a risk you're not ready to take. The commands are quieter now, more precise. Adjust, hold, stay in line. There's no shouting, no dramatic gestures, just controlled direction, guiding the line back into something stable. You take a breath, then another. Each one feels a little deeper than before, your body trying to recover without losing readiness. It's a delicate balance, resting while standing, recovering while still prepared to move at any moment. And then you notice something else. Discipline. Not the kind you felt during training. The structured repetition, the constant correction. This is different. This is discipline under pressure, when everything is uncertain and the only thing keeping the line intact is the shared decision to hold. Or maybe not even a decision, maybe just habit. Ancient Greek armies relied heavily on this kind of discipline. There were no complex communication systems, no distant commands carried instantly across the field. Everything depended on proximity, on trust, on the ability of each soldier to maintain their role without constant oversight. Historians often point out that the strength of the phalanx wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The willingness to stand, to hold, to trust the people beside you even when every instinct might be telling you to step back. Historians still argue whether this discipline came more from training or from social pressure. The fear of letting down your fellow citizens, your family, your city. Standing here now, it feels like both. You shift your weight slightly, carefully. Your leg still aches, but it holds. Your arm adjusts under the weight of the shield, finding a position that feels just stable enough to maintain without unnecessary strain. You're learning how to manage yourself within the limits of what your body can handle. That's new. Before, it was about pushing through. Now, it's about sustaining. There's a movement to your left, subtle, controlled. You glance just enough to register it without breaking focus. The line is tightening again, small adjustments bringing everyone back into alignment. No gaps, no weakness, or at least less of it. There's a quiet understanding that forms here. No one says it. No one needs to. You've all felt what happens when the line wavers. You've all experienced that moment of imbalance, that brief uncertainty, and none of you want to feel it again, so you hold. More carefully now, more deliberately. There's a strange detail that surfaces in your thoughts, something you might have dismissed earlier but now feels oddly relevant. In some Greek city-states, soldiers who broke formation or showed cowardice could face severe consequences, not just during the battle, but afterward. Loss of status, public shame, even exile. It wasn't just about survival, it was about reputation, about identity. Historians still debate how strictly these punishments were enforced in practice, but the idea alone would have been enough to shape behaviour. Because here you're not just an individual, you're part of something larger, and failing that carries weight. You feel a small shift behind you, a presence, a reminder that the line extends beyond what you can see. You're connected to something that stretches in both directions, something that only works if everyone maintains their place. That thought settles into you, heavier than before, but also steadier. The air feels different now, not cooler, but less charged. The immediate tension of impact has passed, replaced by a quieter, more controlled awareness. You're still alert, still ready, but the sharp edge has softened into something more sustainable. You take another breath, your grip loosens slightly, not enough to lose control, just enough to ease the strain. There's a pause, not a full stop, but a moment where nothing urgent is happening. No pushing, no sudden movement, just waiting. And that might be the hardest part. Because waiting leaves space. Space for thought, space for awareness, space for the realization of everything you're feeling. The ache in your muscles, the weight of your armor, the lingering tension in your chest. It all becomes clearer when there's nothing immediate to distract you. You hear a voice somewhere down the line, low, controlled, giving quiet instructions. You can't make out every word, but the tone is enough. Steady, focused, not panicked. That helps. More than you'd expect, because if the voice is steady, maybe things are still under control. You adjust your stance again, your body responding more smoothly now, more efficiently. The movements that felt awkward earlier are becoming more natural, more instinctive. Not perfect, but functional. That's enough. You glance forward again. The space ahead is different now. Less compressed, more open. Not empty, but not immediately threatening either. It's a temporary shift, you know that. Nothing here stays the same for long, but you take it for what it is. A moment, a chance to breathe, a chance to hold without being pushed. And in that moment, you realise something subtle but important. You're still here, still standing, still part of the line. Not unscathed, not untouched, but intact. And as you settle back into position, your shield steady, your grip firm but not strained, you understand. This isn't just about surviving the clash. It's about surviving everything around it. The waiting, the pressure, the expectations, the constant need to hold, to adapt, to continue. And somehow, you are. The stillness doesn't last. It never does. At first, it's subtle. So subtle you almost miss it. A shift in posture, a tightening of grips. The way the line seems to lean, just slightly, as if bracing for something not yet visible. You feel it before you understand it. That quiet tension returning. Not as sharp as before, but deeper, heavier. Your body reacts instinctively. Your shoulders firm up beneath the weight of your armor. Your grip adjusts around your shield. Your stance lowers just enough to prepare, without fully committing. You're learning now, not through instruction, through repetition, through experience. This is the part no one can really prepare you for. Not the physical strain, not the formations, but what happens inside your own mind. Because now that the immediate chaos has passed, something else begins to take its place. Thought, not clear, not organized, just present. You become aware of your breathing again, slower now, but uneven. Each inhale feels slightly different from the last, your body trying to find a rhythm that matches the uncertainty around you. You notice your heartbeat, not racing like before, but heavy, deliberate, as if it's marking time instead of reacting to it. And then a thought slips in, uninvited, unhelpful. How long can this last? You don't answer it. You can't, because there is no answer. Ancient warfare wasn't measured in neat, predictable intervals. Battles could stretch, stall, surge, and collapse without clear patterns. For soldiers, time didn't move in hours or minutes. It moved in moments, in bursts of intensity followed by stretches of waiting, in uncertainty. Historians often describe this as one of the most psychologically exhausting aspects of ancient combat. Not the fighting itself, but the unpredictability of it. Standing here now. You understand that, because the hardest part isn't knowing what to do. It's not knowing when you'll have to do it again. You shift your weight slightly. Your leg still aches. But now it's a background sensation, no longer demanding your attention, just existing, like everything else. There's another movement along the line, subtle, controlled, but different from before. Not a reaction, more like anticipation. You feel your body respond again, tightening, preparing, aligning with the people around you without needing to look. That connection is stronger now, less conscious, more automatic. You don't need to check if they're there. You know they are, and they know you are. There's a strange comfort in that, even here, especially here, because without it, everything would fall apart. Another thought creeps in, quieter this time, more persistent. What happens if someone breaks? You push it away, but not completely, because you've already seen what happens, the gap, the shift, the immediate correction. It worked before, but that doesn't mean it always will. There's no guarantee here, no certainty, just probability and pressure. You hear a sound, distant but distinct, not close enough to be immediate, not far enough to ignore. It sharpens your focus instantly. Your body reacts before your mind fully processes it, your stance adjusting, your grip tightening, your attention narrowing. This is it, or maybe not, that's the problem, you don't know. And that uncertainty builds, slowly, relentlessly. Your thoughts start to narrow, not because you're forcing them to, but because there's no room for anything else, no space for memory, no space for distraction, just the present moment, your position, your role, your survival. There's something almost mechanical about it, not emotionless, but simplified, stripped down to what matters. Historians sometimes describe this as a kind of mental adaptation, a way the mind copes with sustained stress by focusing only on immediate, actionable concerns. It's not something you choose, it just happens. And right now, it's happening to you. You take a breath. It steadies you, not completely, but enough. You adjust your stance again, feeling the ground beneath your feet, uneven, worn, but still solid enough to support you. That matters. Small details matter now, more than they did before. The angle of your shield, the placement of your foot, the distance between you and the person beside you. Everything has weight. Everything has consequence. You're aware of your body in a different way now. Not just as something you control, but as something you manage, monitor, maintain. There's a quiet realization that settles in. You're not the same as you were before this started. Not physically, not mentally. Something has shifted, not broken, not yet, but changed. And that change is still happening, moment by moment, adjustment by adjustment. You hear another command, low, controlled, passing along the line like a ripple. You respond without thinking, your body moving in sync with the others, a small step, a slight turn, a realignment. It feels natural, now. That's what stands out the most. What once required effort now happens automatically. That's not comfort, it's adaptation, and it comes with a cost, because the more natural this becomes, the harder it is to remember what it felt like before. Before the weight, before the pressure, before the constant awareness of how easily things can change. You don't dwell on that. You can't. There's no space for it. The tension builds again, slowly, steadily, not explosive, not sudden, but undeniable. You feel it in your muscles, in your breath, in the way the line subtly tightens once more, and you know, without anyone needing to say it, this isn't over, Not even close. You shift your grip, steady your stance, focus forward, and wait. Because here, waiting is part of the fight. The next shift doesn't come from the front. It comes from somewhere else. At first, you don't recognize it for what it is. The line doesn't surge forward. There's no immediate clash, no sudden compression of bodies and shields. Instead, there's movement behind you. Subtle, organized, but different. You feel it as a change in awareness more than anything else. The sense that your role, your position, is no longer the only thing that matters in this moment. Something is happening beyond the line. You risk a glance. Just enough. And what you see doesn't fit the pattern you've been holding on to. Not tightly packed ranks. Not the close, suffocating pressure of the phalanx. But space, movement, preparation. The realization comes slowly. Not all fighting happens like this. Not all of it is shield to shield. Ancient Greek warfare wasn't limited to the phalanx alone. While heavily armoured hoplites formed the backbone of most armies, there were others, lighter troops, skirmishers, and at times entirely different kinds of engagements. And sometimes, the battlefield expands. Your focus snaps back forward, because your position hasn't changed. You're still here, still part of the line. But now there's something else layered on top of it. A broader awareness that the fight isn't just what you can see directly ahead. It's larger, more complex. You hear it next. A different kind of sound. Not the heavy, grinding pressure of shields, not the close, contained rhythm of bodies pushing against each other. This is looser, faster, less predictable. It carries across the field in a way the phalanx doesn't. Sharp, scattered, uneven. Your grip tightens again, not out of immediate necessity, but because your body doesn't know how else to respond. This is unfamiliar, and unfamiliar means dangerous. There's a brief moment where the line hesitates, not breaking, not shifting dramatically, but pausing just enough to acknowledge that something has changed. You feel it in the stillness, in the way everyone holds just a little tighter, listens just a little more closely, trying to understand, trying to anticipate. You hear a command, clearer this time, carrying more urgency than before. It moves along the line quickly, repeated, reinforced. Hold position. Don't break formation. That matters. More than anything else right now. Because whatever is happening beyond you, your role hasn't changed. You are still part of the foundation. Still part of the structure that everything else depends on. There's a strange tension in that. Knowing that something is shifting elsewhere. Something you can't fully see or control, while you remain fixed in place. It feels incomplete. Like being part of a larger mechanism without seeing how all the pieces fit together. Historians often describe ancient battles as chaotic beyond the immediate formations. While the phalanx itself could be highly organised, the rest of the battlefield, skirmishes, flanking movements, sudden engagements, could be far less predictable. Communication was limited. Visibility was restricted. Most soldiers only knew what was happening in their immediate surroundings. Standing here now, you understand that limitation, because you feel it. The uncertainty, the lack of information, the awareness that something important might be happening just beyond your perception. You shift your stance slightly, not out of discomfort, but out of readiness. Your body preparing for something it can't yet define. The sounds continue, intermittent, uneven, sometimes closer, sometimes fading. Each one pulls at your attention, tries to draw your focus away from where it needs to be. But you resist. You stay forward. Stay aligned. Because that's what you've learned. That's what matters. The person beside you adjusts their position slightly. You feel it through the subtle change in pressure, the shift in space between you. It's small, but noticeable. You match it instinctively, closing the gap, maintaining the line, that connection again. Stronger now, more reliable, even when everything else feels uncertain. There's a moment, a brief one, where the sounds from beyond seem to intensify, sharper, closer, more immediate. Your body reacts instantly, your grip tightens, your shoulders brace, your breath shortens. This could be it. This could be where it reaches you. But then, it doesn't. The intensity fades again, pulls back, leaving you in that same state of readiness, that same suspended tension. It's exhausting, not physically, not yet, but mentally, because you're constantly preparing for something that hasn't arrived. and might not, at least not in the way you expect. You take a breath, slow, controlled, trying to steady yourself without losing that edge of awareness. It's a difficult balance. Too relaxed and you risk being unprepared. Too tense and you exhaust yourself before anything happens. You're learning that balance now, in real time. There's another command, quieter but firm. It reinforces the same idea. Hold, stay, maintain formation. It's almost reassuring. Not because it changes anything, but because it gives you something definite to focus on, something certain in the middle of uncertainty. You glance forward again. The space ahead remains relatively unchanged. No immediate threat, no sudden movement, just the same uneasy stillness. But now, you know that stillness doesn't mean safety. It just means waiting. You adjust your footing again, feeling the ground beneath you, grounding yourself in something physical, something real. That helps, a little, because everything else feels distant, abstract, unclear. You realize something as you stand there, holding position, listening to the shifting sounds of a battle you can't fully see. You're not in control of the outcome, not entirely, maybe not even significantly. Your role is smaller than that, more focused, more limited, and yet still essential, because if this part fails, everything connected to it feels the impact. That thought settles in, not heavy, not overwhelming, just present. You take another breath, steady your grip, keep your position, and wait. Because here, even when the battlefield expands beyond your sight, your place within it remains the same. The sounds begin to change again. Not louder, not closer, just different. At first, it's difficult to place. The rhythm you had started to recognize, the uneven bursts, the scattered intensity, shifts into something more sustained, more coordinated. You feel it ripple through the line before you fully understand it. The subtle tightening, the way shoulders square, the way grips firm just slightly, as if everyone is bracing for something that hasn't reached you yet, but might. Your focus sharpens, not because you see anything new, but because you sense it. That familiar build of pressure returning, not from direct contact, but from anticipation. There's movement along the line again, small, controlled, but purposeful. You adjust instinctively, your body aligning with the shift without needing to think it through. A slight step, a minor turn, your shield angling just enough to maintain coverage without overextending. It feels smoother now, more natural. That realization sits quietly in the back of your mind. You've adapted. Not completely, but enough. And that changes how you experience this moment. You're not reacting the way you did before, sharp, immediate, almost overwhelmed. Now, there's a layer of control, not over what's happening, but over how you respond to it. You hear a command, clearer than before, more direct. It travels quickly, repeated along the line with urgency but not panic. Prepare. That word settles differently than the others. Not hold, not adjust. Prepare. It implies something more, something imminent. Your body responds immediately. Your stance lowers slightly, your weight distributing more evenly across your feet. Your grip tightens, not rigid, but ready. You take a breath, then hold it for just a fraction longer than before. The air feels heavier. Or maybe that's just you. Historians often note that coordination between different parts of an ancient army, phalanx, skirmishers, cavalry where available, was difficult but not impossible. When it worked, it could shift the momentum of a battle quickly. When it didn't, confusion followed. Standing here now, you don't know which one this is, and that uncertainty presses in, not overwhelming, but persistent. You glance briefly to the side. The person next to you is steady, focused, mirroring your posture without needing to look at you. That connection again, now stronger than ever, because it's not just about reacting, it's about anticipating together. There's another sound, closer this time, sharper, more defined. It cuts through the background noise in a way that demands attention. Your body reacts before your mind fully catches up. Your shield shifts slightly, your stance tightening, your focus narrowing to the space directly ahead. This is it, or at least part of it. The line begins to move, not forward in a rush, not with the overwhelming force of earlier, but deliberately, a controlled advance. You feel it immediately, the coordinated step, the shared motion that carries through everyone at once. It's not chaotic, it's unified. You step forward, once, then again, each movement measured, balanced, supported by the presence of those beside you. The ground shifts beneath your feet, but you're ready for it now. Your footing adjusts automatically, your body compensating without hesitation. That's new. Before, it would have thrown you. Now, it's just part of the process. The pressure begins to return, not sudden, not explosive, but building. Gradually. You feel it through your shield first, a subtle contact, a testing of resistance. Then through your stance, your body bracing as the space ahead compresses once more. The line is engaging again, but this time, it feels different. More controlled, less chaotic. Not easier, but more familiar. You lean into it, not fully, just enough to maintain your position, to match the force without overcommitting. Your movements are smaller now, more efficient, less wasted energy, more precision. You hear the sounds of contact, closer now, more immediate. The steady rhythm of shields meeting, of bodies pressing, of effort applied and resisted. It's not overwhelming like before, because you know it now. You understand the pattern, or at least, enough of it. There's a moment, a brief one, where everything aligns. Your stance, your grip, your balance, the movement of the line around you. It feels stable, even under pressure. That's new. That's something you didn't expect, because earlier everything felt like it could collapse at any moment. Now, it still could, but it doesn't feel as immediate. There's a layer of confidence, not in the outcome, but in the process. You know what to do, and more importantly, you know you can do it. The person beside you shifts again. You match it, without thinking, without hesitation. That connection is seamless now, almost instinctive. You're no longer individuals standing next to each other. You're part of a single structure, a unified line, and that changes everything. Because the strength you feel isn't just yours, it's shared, distributed, reinforced. The pressure increases, gradually, steadily. Your muscles respond, your body leaning, your shield pressing forward with controlled force. You're not reacting anymore. You're participating, actively, deliberately. There's a subtle realization that forms as you continue, step by step, movement by movement. You're no longer just trying to survive this moment. You're functioning within it, adapting, contributing, holding not just because you have to, but because you can. That thought doesn't make things easier. It doesn't reduce the strain, or the uncertainty, or the risk. But it changes how you carry them. You take another step. Your shield holds, your stance steadies, the line remains intact, and as the pressure builds once more, as the sounds of engagement surround you again, you understand something that wasn't clear before. This isn't just about endurance anymore, it's about cohesion, about how well you and everyone around you can move, adjust, and hold together under pressure. Because here, that's what determines whether the line stands or falls. At some point the pressure doesn't ease, it just stops growing. Not because the effort has ended, but because everything has reached a kind of balance. You feel it in the way your body settles into the strain, not resisting it anymore, not trying to push beyond it, but holding exactly where it needs to. Your muscles aren't relaxed, but they're no longer fighting the tension either. They've accepted it. Your breathing finds a rhythm, not calm, not steady in the way it would be at rest, but consistent, reliable, each inhale measured, each exhale controlled. You're no longer reacting to the moment. You're existing within it. The line holds, firm, unbroken. You can feel the presence of everyone around you more clearly now than at any point before, not through sight, but through pressure, through movement, through the subtle, constant adjustments that keep everything aligned. It's no longer something you think about. It's something you feel. There's a strange clarity that comes with this. Not peace, not comfort, but focus. Everything unnecessary falls away. There's no room for doubt, no space for distraction, just the immediate reality of your position, your role, your connection to the line. Historians sometimes describe moments like this as the turning point, not always in a dramatic sense, not marked by a sudden collapse or a decisive push, but as a shift in stability. One side holds, the other begins to falter, not visibly, not all at once, but gradually, subtly. You don't know if that's happening here. You can't see far enough, can't understand the full shape of the battlefield, but you feel something, a difference, small, almost unnoticeable. The pressure ahead isn't as consistent as it was before. It fluctuates, slightly, enough to register, enough to matter. You adjust without thinking. Your stance shifts. Your shield presses forward just a fraction more, not aggressively, not as a push, but as a reinforcement. Testing, matching, maintaining. The response comes back, but it's not as firm, not as unified. You notice it. Even if you can't fully explain it, the line remains intact, but something on the other side is changing. You don't rush, you don't surge forward, because that's not how this works. That's not how this has worked from the beginning. Instead, you hold. You match the movement, you let the structure guide the action. There's another small step forward, coordinated, controlled, the kind of movement that only works when everyone does it together. You feel it ripple through the line, left, right, behind you, a shared motion that carries without breaking cohesion. And again, the response is weaker, not absent, but reduced. You don't think about what that means. You don't let your mind jump ahead, because that's dangerous, because assuming too much too early can break the very thing that's holding you together. So you stay in the moment, you focus on what's real, what's immediate, what you can feel. Your grip remains firm, your stance remains stable, your attention remains forward. There's a sound, different from before, not sharper, not louder, but shifting, hard to define, harder to ignore. It carries a different tone, less resistance, more movement, not toward you, away. You don't react immediately, you don't break formation, because everything you've learned, everything you've experienced, tells you that the line is what matters. Not individual action, not sudden decisions, but cohesion. And that cohesion holds. Even now, especially now, another step, another adjustment, another subtle shift in pressure, and again, less resistance. It's becoming clearer, not obvious, not undeniable, but present. The balance is tipping, slowly. You feel it in your body, in the way your effort begins to change, not increasing, not straining harder, but redistributing. Your muscles aren't pushing as much as they're maintaining control over the movement, guiding it. That's new. That's different. There's a brief moment where the space ahead opens slightly. Not a gap, not a break. Just less. Your instinct is to fill it. But you don't rush. You move with the line. One step, measured, supported, and the line follows. Or maybe you're following it. At this point, it's hard to tell. Because you're no longer separate from it. You are the line. That realization settles in quietly, without drama, without emphasis, but with weight, because everything you've experienced, every moment of pressure, every adjustment, every instinctive reaction has led to this. Not a decisive strike, not a sudden victory, but a gradual shift, a slow change in balance. You take another breath. It feels deeper now. Not because the situation is safer, but because your body is no longer fighting itself. It's aligned, focused, working with the moment instead of against it. The sounds continue to shift. Less impact, more movement. Still controlled, still uncertain, but different. You don't chase it. You don't break. You hold. Because that's what has kept you here this long. That's what has allowed the line to remain intact. And as you take another step, steady, deliberate, supported, you understand something that wasn't clear before. Victory here doesn't arrive all at once. It builds slowly, through pressure, through cohesion, through the simple act of not breaking. And right now, you haven't. It doesn't end with a single moment. No clear signal, no sudden silence. Just a gradual fading. At first, you barely notice it. The pressure that once defined everything, every movement, every breath, begins to lessen. Not all at once. Not in a way that feels safe or certain, but enough. Enough that your body starts to register the absence. Your shield is still raised. Your stance is still set. But the force against you is no longer constant. It comes in fragments now, uneven, fading. You don't move forward, you don't break formation. Because you've learned better than that. Because everything you've experienced has taught you that the line is what matters, not the moment, not the impulse, not the temptation to act too soon. So you hold, even as the space ahead begins to open, even as the sounds shift, less impact, more distance, more separation between each movement. There's a strange quiet beneath it all. Not silence, never silence, but something softer, less demanding. Your breathing changes. You don't force it. It just happens. Each inhale comes easier. Each exhale carries less weight. Your body hasn't relaxed, not fully, but it's beginning to, slowly, cautiously. You feel it in your shoulders first, the tension easing just enough to notice, then in your grip, your fingers loosening slightly around the handle of your shield. Not enough to lose control, just enough to rest. The commands return, clear, measured, but different now. Hold position, do not pursue, maintain formation. There's something final in the tone, not an ending, but a boundary, a line that you don't cross, even now, especially now. Ancient battles didn't always conclude with total destruction or decisive clarity. Often, one side would give way, retreating in fragments rather than collapsing all at once. The other side, if disciplined, would hold formation rather than chasing, avoiding the risk of turning order into chaos. Historians still debate how often that discipline held. Standing here, you understand why it mattered, because the moment you break the line, you lose everything that kept you alive. You remain where you are, even as the space ahead grows wider, even as the sounds of movement pull away from you. There's a strange feeling that settles in, not relief, not triumph, something quieter, more uncertain. You're still alert, still watching. Because part of you expects it to return, that pressure, that sudden shift, that demand to brace and hold again. But it doesn't, not immediately. And that absence feels unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. You shift your weight slightly, carefully. Your leg responds, still sore, still strained, but holding. Your arm adjusts beneath the shield, the weight now more noticeable without the constant force pushing against it. That's new. Before, the pressure masked everything. Now, you feel it all. The fatigue, the strain, the lingering tension in your muscles. It settles into you slowly, like something that's been waiting for its moment to be noticed. The person beside you lowers their shield slightly, not fully, just enough to ease the strain. You mirror it, carefully, watching, waiting. The line remains intact, but it's different now, less rigid, more fluid, still connected, still aware, but no longer under immediate threat. There's a moment, quiet, almost fragile, where you allow yourself to look forward more fully. The space ahead is open, not empty, but no longer pressing, no longer demanding. Whatever was there has moved, or is moving. You don't follow. You don't step out of line, because that's not your role. Not here, not now. There's another command, softer but firm. Stand down, slowly. It passes along the line, repeated, controlled. Not a release, a transition. You lower your shield a little more. Your arm protests immediately, the sudden shift in weight revealing how much strain it's been under this entire time. You adjust, carefully, letting the muscles adapt. Your posture changes, not fully relaxed, but no longer braced for impact. Your breathing deepens again. This time, it feels different, not forced, not controlled, just natural. You take it in, slowly, the air, the space, the absence of pressure. It feels almost unreal. There's a quiet realization that begins to form, not sudden, not overwhelming, but steady. You made it through, not untouched, not unchanged, but still standing. That matters, more than anything else right now. Around you, the line begins to shift, not breaking, not dispersing, but easing out of that perfect alignment that held everything together. Small movements, subtle adjustments, people reclaiming space that didn't exist before. You remain where you are for a moment longer, Not because you have to, but because part of you isn't ready to let go of that structure just yet. Because it's the only thing that made sense in the middle of everything else, and without it, there's a strange emptiness. You lower your shield fully now, the weight settles into your arm, heavy, real, a reminder of everything it carried. You flex your fingers slightly. They respond, slowly, but they respond. That's enough. You take a step, just one, not forward into the open space, but back, into yourself, out of the line. The sounds of the battlefield continue in the distance, fading, shifting, unresolved, but they're no longer immediate, no longer yours to carry in the same way. And as you stand there, breathing, adjusting, becoming aware of your body in a way you haven't been since this began, you understand something that wasn't clear before. This wasn't a moment, not a single clash, not a single test. It was a series of them, layered, connected, relentless, and you endured, not by strength alone, not by skill alone, but by holding, by adapting, by remaining part of something larger than yourself. That's what kept you here. That's what brought you through. And as the line dissolves into something less rigid, less defined, you carry that with you, not as a victory, not as a story to tell, but as a quiet understanding of what it took, of what it cost, and of how close everything always was to breaking.